Hi, this is Joe. Thanks for coming back for another video. I just picked up a 2011 CBR 600RR for myself. The GSXR 750 is a project bike I'm working on. When I finish it, I'm going to turn around and sell it. But I picked this bike up for myself. I went to put a license plate holder on so I can mount the license plate. When I purchased the bike, there was no license plate on it. Let me take you over to the workbench. I'll show you what I found out and how we're going to fix the problem. On a CBR 600RR, how you're supposed to mount the license plate is underneath the seat. There is a servo controller, and there's a servo cover. And you're supposed to screw the license plate onto the servo cover. Well, as you can see here, the servo cover has a big rip, big piece cut out of it. So apparently what happened is the person I purchased the bike from had a license plate bracket on there, and somehow either somebody kicked it or bumped it or whatever, and it broke the license plate mount off of this servo cover. I went online and I can purchase a new servo cover for about $7.50, but then you run the risk of damaging it again and knocking the piece of plastic out of the servo cover. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a repair. I've taken some thin cardboard and made a template inside the servo cover, and then I've cut some sheet metal. This is 22 gauge aluminum, so it's very flexible, very bendable, but rigid enough for being able to mount a license plate holder to it. So what I did was I shaped it and bent it slightly, and I have a piece for this side, and then I've cut a small piece of aluminum to fit on this side as well, and then we have another piece, and then I can put that on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to epoxy with flexible epoxy, and then we're going to let it cure overnight, and then we can make a new license plate out of a license plate holder out of some aluminum, 16 gauge aluminum that I have. So we'll drill some new holes, we'll mount the new bracket on, and I'll show you how we're going to manufacture the license plate holder. So let's go ahead and mix up some epoxy, and we'll start putting these aluminum pieces back in to the servo cover here. We've mixed up some thickened epoxy. Now we're going to start epoxying the aluminum sheets into the servo holder. Go ahead and put the small piece of metal on there. Now we'll take a couple pieces of, actually first, let's take and wipe off some of the excess epoxy that we don't want. Then we're going to take a piece of wood and put it on each side. And then we're going to take a clamp. Wouldn't you know it, just when I start putting the epoxy on, the battery dies. So we went ahead and we put the bottom piece and top piece on. We epoxied them on, and now we've clamped it. We're going to let it set overnight and cure, and then tomorrow we're going to manufacture the license plate bracket. So let's let this cure overnight. Next morning, we note that our epoxy has cured. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make a bracket. We have some 16 gauge aluminum sheet, and this is 4 inches long. We've made a 1 inch mark, a 1/2 inch mark at one end, and a 1/2 inch mark at the other. What we're going to do is we're going to bend this where this can mount 90 degrees to the bracket. This is going to bend down this way to clear the exhaust, and then this part we're going to bend this back up flush, and this part we're going to bend down at an angle so we can take another piece of aluminum and we can mount the bracket that the license plate will mount to. So all you need to do this. You don't need a fancy metal bender. You can just use a regular vise. Let me show you how we're going to bend this. We have a vise and we have a dead blow hammer, and we're going to be using the hard end of this hammer. And then we're going to do some bends on the piece of sheet metal. Let's set this up. Take your first line, and we're going to put it in the vise right at the 1 inch line. Tighten your vise, and then we're going to take the hammer and we've made our first bend in the metal. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make another bend. We're going to come up this way so we have a 1/2 inch clearance to clear the exhaust on the motorcycle. So let's go ahead and set this up in the vise, and we'll make our second bend. Now we're going to raise the metal up to the 1/2 inch mark. Make sure you get the metal straight, or else your bend will be crooked. And then tighten your vise, and then we're going to pound the metal back this way. Now you're going to have a bend like this. What you can do is, if it curves a little bit too much, you can put that in the vise and you can straighten that end out. So then what we want to do at this point is now we want to bend the 1/2 inch portion on the other side of the bracket down. And we don't want a 90-degree bend. We want something past 190 degrees. We want the license plate to sit a little bit at an angle this way. So let's go ahead and set that up in the vise now. We want to then insert the metal into the vise. You want to make sure it's flush on the line. You want to tighten it like that. And now we're going to take our hammer now that's 90 degrees. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to bend this a little past 90 degrees. I'm going to show you a tool that we can use to do that. This is a hand bender. You can pick this up at Harbor Freight. You can order this on Amazon. What we're going to do is we're going to take this piece right here and we're going to clamp this on. Make sure we're flush. And notice now we have an angle past 90 degrees. So when we take our license plate piece, which is going to be long enough, about 7 inches, we can then fasten this to this. The license plate is going to set back at an angle like that. And let me show you the other piece now. Now we have the plate with the holes. This way we can slide the license plate back and forth to even it out on the bike. And let's go ahead and get our bracket now. What we're going to do, notice the angle bends back. That way the license plate will tilt the bottom back a bit. And when we mount this on the servo cover, we're going to mount this and offset it to one side because the servo cover is on the left hand side. Now there's a couple different ways you can attach the bracket, the bent bracket, to the straight license plate bracket. I'm going to TIG weld mine, but if you don't have access to a TIG welder, you can drill a couple flat bolts and you can bolt that, or you can get yourself a pop riveter and you can drill 2 small holes and pop rivet this bracket to the bent bracket. Let me get that pop riveter and show you what it looks like. This is what a pop riveter looks like. You can pick this up at any hardware store. And you can pick up an assortment of pop rivets, and they come in different lengths and different diameters. So this is the smallest. This is a 1/8 inch in diameter, and you can get different lengths. The smallest one is 1/8 by 1/4. So what we're going to do, we'll take one of these pop rivets, we have 2 pieces of metal. This is just a sample here. We're going to drill, in this case, a 1/8 inch hole between both pieces of metal. We're going to take our pop rivet, and we're going to take the long section and put it in the pop riveter. Then what we're going to do is take the pop rivet and put it between both holes, and then we're going to keep on squeezing till it snaps. It breaks the little tab off and it squeezes the little end between the two pieces of sheet metal. So now you have a nice strong joint that's fairly flush. And if you don't have access to a TIG welder, this would be one way to attach two pieces of sheet metal together. The other would be to put a bolt, but in this case you want a fairly flush mount, so I would do 2 to 3 pop rivets on your bracket. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll drill the holes in the servo cover and get that ready for mounting. We're looking underneath the tail section on the motorcycle. Here is the servo cover. What we're going to do is we're going to take our bracket and we're going to hold this flush, and we're going to try to orient the end here to 90 degrees. Then we're going to take our felt tip marker and we're going to mark a good spot to mark that, and then when we drill the holes we're going to slot the holes a little bit so we can pivot this left and right to get exactly 90 degrees. So we're going to center this and we're going to come in and we're going to mark the hole. And there, now we can remove the servo cover, drill the holes in the bracket where we want them, and then drill the holes in the servo cover, and we'll slot those holes a little bit so we have some room to pivot this bracket. So let's go ahead and pull that servo cover back off. We have the bracket on now. I had to bend this tab much farther back because we were having a clearance problem with the tire. So if we now take and line up the holes on the license plate bracket, and then we can move this up here, now we have at least an inch clearance on the tire. So now we can position this where we want. And that looks pretty good right there. So let's move that. So we're going to move that up there. And we're going to line up that right there. So we have about a ½ inch clearance to the left of the bracket. So it's going to be about a ½ inch from here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to clean up the aluminum, pull the bracket, and we're going to weld the license plate bracket onto the mounting bracket. And then what we're going to do is sand it up, paint it, and then we can put the license plate on and we should be ready to go. I'll show you when I'm all done. We finished the bracket and now we're going to mount it to the servo cover. And notice that I've also painted it with satin black. So now let's go ahead and get this mounted on. We have the bracket now mounted to the servo cover. Let's go ahead and install the servo cover back underneath the seat, and then we'll mount the license plate. We have the bracket mounted and tightened down now. All we have to do is mount and center the license plate now. We'll go ahead and do that. We mounted the license plate now, and you notice here's the fender, so we want to make sure the license plate is above the fender. We've got about 3/4 of an inch above the fender. You want to make sure you have plenty of room, because when you sit on the bike or you go over bumps, the suspension is going to flex a bit, and I think that's what happened, why the other license plate holder broke, is they had the license plate too low, and so when you go over bumps and stuff, it came down, hit the tire, and broke off the bracket from the servo cover. So that's how you mount a license plate on a 2011 CBR 600RR. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next video.